Hello, I'm with Marcus Hampton, a jazz musician and composer native to Indianapolis, Indiana. He comes from the Hampton family, and Indianapolis is also noted for many musicians. Aren't they, Ham? Name some of the musicians that came out of Indianapolis.
Well, you had my family came out and after they moved from I think it's Middletown, Ohio. Uh, we had people that my family were involved with around the city that came to the house a lot of times when a lot of times when they was getting involved with our musical family band. They played with the band, a lot of them did, and a lot of them just played with the individuals in the band, as far as just playing duets at a time in the spare time that they got together with each other and play different things and try to develop themselves as musicians at that time. Freddie Hubbard was one of them. Jimmy Cole, I don't know if anybody know Jimmy Cole. He had one of the big bands around there and he played. David Baker, who played around the town before he became Professor David Baker now. We had quite a few people, I can't recall all the names just right off the bat, but a lot of them became great players as well as became family members and friends, as well as all the Montgomery brothers, Wes, Buddy, and Monk. They were, all these musicians I'm speaking of were not really well famous at the time. Became famous and legendary within their own rights. Now, my family was kind of an extraordinary situation, and it's passed down through generations from their mother and father, who were great people within themselves, especially their father, my grandfather, who was Deacon Clark Hampton, who played all the instruments and taught them all. He was fairly highly educated. I don't know how or where he got his education from, but from what I've been told, he was born something like 12 years after the emancipation, so that would make him born in the days of slavery, and he went through quite a bit of things, I'm sure, that nobody even talks about. I just can't understand how he did what he did, except he was respected, I guess, highly because of his profession and all the different things that he could do. He was once a musician first, who could play all the instruments and teach them all. And two, he was a magician who did magic tricks with his wife or grandmother or their mother. And he was also a painter, an artist who could paint anything. I mean, Michelangelo didn't have nothing on this man when it come to painting. I can attest to that because I saw it, and I saw what he did when he was painting individual painting. He had two large canvas paintings that he did. One was about Pearl Harbor, where he showed airplanes going over the water over Pearl Harbor. He made a big picture of that. I think it's around about maybe 10 to 12 feet tall, and about maybe about 8 to 10 feet wide. And he had another picture about the same size that I think they put it to the hospital after he finished that. And it was about Jesus Christ walking on water. And you should see that. I mean, this man was unbelievable. And I say that, and I can attest to it to a certain extent. I can't attest to everything about that because I wasn't born. But what I've been told, and I have pictures, and I have information about the family when they were being taken by their father, and he was training them to become the musicians they all ended up being. And they were around 3 or 4 years old. Now that is amazing. I don't even today that would be amazing to have a kid 3 and 4 years old, which we have kids 3 and 4 years old that play an instrument, and a lot of them are child prodigies, and they really outdo themselves. And my family was somewhat like that, but they was not trained to read music or understand a lot of things about music. And I understand until the Second Year War was over with.
I'm going to give you some of the information that you brought. If you want to
Yeah.
refer from that and then and be able to
Well,
go through each of the topics like you were doing upstairs telling us about it. I'm going to take a different format here. I'm just going to let this run and we're just going to have a conversation and you can just speak. I think that would be the coolest way to do it. What do you think, Cam?
But then you could just cut it up and edit
Right.
it.
Or even we may not need to cut it up
Yeah.
because you're doing a great job. You were showing me an article there upstairs. And would you mind pulling that? And then and what we'll do also is we'll take either scan those or take good photos so people can see those once we post this. But I'd like for people watching and listening to you tell this history to see some of the documentation that you have about your family and about jazz and everything else. I think that's pretty cool, and we appreciate you sharing this.
Oh, yeah.
And for further information about Mark Hampton, he's got music on iTunes and all the different places. His release with the Artist Recording Collective ARC label is Hampton House of Jazz. His website, and I'll put it on this video as well so that you'll see it, but it's marcushampton.com. You can find more about the family there.
You may not be able to see this too well because it's not.
Let me zoom in just a bit, but we'll also...
highlighted that well.
Here we go, the Hamptons.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about that a bit?
This is some information about the family, about the time they had the dates about when they were born, and their involvement in the family, what they did, what role they played as the family band. Now, this is Duke Hampton, which he named after his father, his real name is Clark. And he was born in 1918. Okay, so he was the oldest boy at the time. They lost the other three, whatever, I don't know what their ages were. Really, I can't know about what their names were. And then you don't have a picture. We don't have a picture here of Alitra, who was the oldest girl who played piano. And I'm not sure when she was born. My recollection, I think she was born 1915 or 1917. And then you have Karma, who's the smaller of all the siblings. She was maybe about 4 feet 10, maybe if that. And she played one of the biggest instruments, was the Barry sax. Plus she played alto too, and she danced and sang. Then there's my father. I don't have a picture shown here, but I got pictures in my other envelopes showing him. And so he was born 1920. Okay, so he's the next in line and boy. Then we got Robert, they call him Russell, and he was a tenor sax player and arranger and composer also. But he had a lot of personal problems and that came to be resolved that he took his own life. And that was in what was that date? I think 1976 when he took his life, I think, but he was born 1924, I believe it is. And Carmen, I spoke about her business, Barry sax player. She was born 1916. So then after Russell, we prefer Robert, his other brother who played trumpet named Maceo. His real name was Bill. And he played a lot of those things that were bebop back in the days of his day. Him and Sly come up together, who's the youngest. Sly was born in 1932. But there's a sibling before both of them named Dawn. She was the youngest of the girls. So I'm not quite sure when she was born, but I think it was around 1927 or 1928. And she's still living. So from Sly being the youngest from 1932 to Maceo, I think he was born 1930. He's next to Sly. Then there's Don, who was the older of those three, who are still living. And we're going to honor those two in February. We're going to have a family reunion, so that's going to be probably, I hope it's not the last, but I expect it might be the last one we might have of the family get together. Of course, since that time, the family had their first to now, their family has grown tremendously large. I mean, we got people in the family now that some of it they never saw. They weren't even born at the time. And we got some that's not in the immediate part of the family that's coming out of the woodwork now. We have found some other siblings that we are related, and we don't know to what extent how they became about and why it came out so late. But I got two more brothers my father had before he passed away, and so, but they're not musicians, they're just siblings, you know. So we got a lot of people in the family that are musicians, and a lot of them that's not musicians. We got some in the family that used to be musicians, they took another route, they decided they want to do something after their lives, so we have that kind of thing going on. So it's about like other family, it's just musical. We raised hell with each other, we did all kinds of things, so.
I've got a question about your family band. When you were growing up, now are you the second generation?
Yeah.
Okay. Talk a little bit about what it was like growing up as a second generation musician in that family. Because Duke Hampton's band traveled and toured and things.
Oh yeah, all down south.
The first generation.
Yeah.
Now the second generation, tell me what that was like.
The second generation, my oldest, she played keyboard, her name was Halo. She's 80 now. I think Halo be turning 81. Her birthday's in the same month mine. Hers is May, so she'd be turning 81 if I'm correct. And so she's the oldest of all my cousins on my father's side. So she played piano and sang a little bit. And her sister Paula, the ones that they all still live now. And Paula lives in New York along with Don. They all up live in New York. And Paula played trombone and drum at that time. And I also myself played trombone and drums at that time. So me and her used to trade off and on when it came to performances. We also had her brother who played trumpet at that time, named Paul Curley. We call him PC. And he's still living. And so those three had the same mother, with their mother was the one that played piano. She was the oldest girl, Leitra. Okay, so in that lineup, we came down to myself and my other cousin, which was from their mother was a little woman that played baritone sax. She had two boys and a girl. And her oldest boy was Joseph Hall, we call him JC. And he played alto or tenor sax at that time. And he had a brother who played drums and played sax at that time. He eventually became a much more prominent drummer when we got into high school. He wasn't playing sax no more. And he died at an early age because I think he died from a rare skin disease or something like that. So we was in our teens when he died. And his sister was born, Tahir, we call her. I don't know exactly what really happened to Tahir, but I don't think she passed away. I think it had something to do with alcohol or something. But she was, I don't recall her playing any instrument. She was just one of the youngest and the last sibling of that bunch. Of course, these are all second generation people I'm talking about. We have no contact with JC's since he left home. I don't know when he left home. I heard something about, I think he was in the military at one time, and something to the nature that he had a problem about being kept in touch with the family because of his nature about being engaged, being a gay person. So I don't know what's happening. I don't know if he's still alive or not. But that's just something that I guess that happens in a lot of families. So it just happened that one time with us. So he was in that situation, so we haven't talked to him. Russell took his own life for his situation problems, you know. I guess a lot of families have such problems like that too. So we're not no different, you know. We're just musical, and we had a strong constitution about how their father, or my grandfather, so to speak, wanted things to go. And he didn't take no for an answer, and he would only tell you something once, not no 2 or 3 times. He made sure you understood what he said, and he would make sure that you follow his rules or what he wants you to do. If you didn't do that, and you know the results. You know.
Now, Duke was born in 1918, wasn't he? That's your grandfather. That was the...
No, that's my grandfather's son, oldest son.
Okay, oldest son.
Yeah, my
Okay.
grandfather was, you know, I don't know how old he was at that time.
Okay, okay. Duke was part of the first generation. He was...
Yeah,
Was he a brother with Slide?
Yep.
And... Yeah, okay.
Slab.
Your father, Marcus Sr.?
Bill, who they call Maceo, and Slab. So there's only, what, Duke, my father, Russell, and Slab. Only 4 boys, and there were 5 girls.
Okay.
The 5 girls, the Leach was the oldest. Carmen was next. Virtue, the one who played bass.
Mm-hmm.
She was born 1922, I think it is. She passed away so many years ago. I forget what the date is. And then we had, I think it was Don. That's it, Virtue, Bleacher, Virtue, Carmen, Don. Who am I missing? I think it was 5 girls. I'm trying to think. Somebody in
What instruments did they play?
well, see, that's the thing about my grandma. He taught them all this. They play all the instruments.
Okay.
Most of all of them play all the instruments. I mean, these instruments that they didn't play today are like ukulele
Right.
and banjo and tuba. You
Now,
know.
what was the training like for you in the second generation? How
Well-
did the second generation come about? You said you played trombone and drums,
Yeah.
but how did you learn these instruments? Did you sit down and take lessons? Did they show you stuff to work on? How did it work?
Nobody from the first generation to the second generation didn't have no constructive criticism of learning how to play a distant instrument like that. I think we were just born naturally musicians or whatever.
So what do they do? Just give you an instrument?
Just give you an instrument and you figure it out on your own. But that's what I did.
Oh my goodness! So your father was a trumpet player,
Yes.
and he just gave you a trumpet and said, "Okay."
Yes, but he had no other
Figure it
time,
out.
because he was on the road, I guess, off and on, you know. And he had time to teach me even, and then he could teach me because they haven't been taught themselves.
Okay,
You
so right.
You see
So
how
they memorized all the music and all their parts and did their arrangements by ear and by memory, didn't
Yes.
they? There was nothing written down, was it?
Nothing written. Not to my knowledge, nothing written.
And that's the way they taught you. That was like the oral tradition
They
of
didn't
how.
teach me. They didn't teach none of us.
Okay, they didn't teach anybody in the second generation. The first generation was by oral tradition, and then the second generation, you just got it by yourself. You
Yeah,
were around
well-
it so much that you just took the instruments and started figuring things out on your own.
That's the way we all did. Even for the first generation, all through. You gave it. I think Clive gave me the last instrument that my grandfather gave him was the trombone.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't heard anything about them being taught, because I know Slab went to Jordan Conservatory.
Later on, that was later on. That's the
Yeah.
school that Freddie and all those,
Freddie and all those
they all
yeah.
went to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you performed with the family band, how did they know that you were ready? Did they just say somebody's not going to be there, Marcus?
No,
You
what
get
really
up.
happened? My father gave me a cornet when I was about 7, 8 years old.
Okay.
Okay. I took the instrument and sat by the radio and started playing with songs on the radio. Rock and roll haven't really came in just yet. Or doo-wop, if you
Mhm.
look at that. So the standards was on the radio every day, so I learned to play standard. I had a terrific ear. I could pick up things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And but there may be 2 to 3 tries. I haven't, you know.
How did you figure out the valve combinations on the trumpet? Just by ear, figuring out what they
By
were,
ear, and by me just pushing certain valve combinations, like I push
and
the
seeing
first
what
valve,
notes came
I would
out.
put a 1 for the first valve, 2 for the second valve, 3 for the third valve, or 1 and 2 for the first two valves. However the combination come out, and that's how I figured that out.
So you figured that out on your own. How old were you when you were working on that?
Oh man, like when I was 7, 8 years old, my father gave me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 'cause, he didn't teach me anything, you know.
That's pretty cool.
He showed me how to clean it.
Okay.
Cause I
Okay.
took the instrument apart, cause I was curious, like most kids, you know, I was curious about how things work and how
Right.
they were put together and things. So I took it apart, but I was so ignorant to the point I didn't know how to put it back together.
Okay.
So my
Okay.
father took the instrument and showed me how to clean it and how to put it back together. That's the only thing he showed me, except when I watch him play or something like that, you know, pick up things he might seem like he's doing. But other than that, no. And I was so young and so gifted that I took the instruments, and I was in elementary school. This was about 1948, 1949. I was in elementary school. And by him being in the military and being a bugle, playing taps and all those kind of bugle calls, I don't know how I got it. I think I learned it from him. But I learned how to play those calls myself. And you can play those calls, open valves, you know, the same valve. You can use 1 and 2 or open valve to play those calls, even to this day. And I didn't know all the calls, but I just knew those ones that would play for flag. So what I would do, I don't know how I got involved, I did it, because I was so young. I used to go to school with my horn, and I played the flag up in the morning, and I played down in the evening.
That's pretty cool.
That's what I used to do just by ear, you know. And we all play by ear, even the family. So I know one day the family was having a rehearsal in our house at the time. And now we have a duplex house, so we have party band on one side of the room and a party band on the other side, or another room, something like that. And they would be counting off, everybody come in and play. But they wasn't reading nothing. They just had their parts down, harmony-wise, whatever, how they did it. I never knew or even thought about it at that time, because I was just busy trying to get myself together, I guess. So I never knew how they managed to perform. It sounded good, man. I mean, they put arrangements together. I mean, Duke would write a few things, Russell writing a few things. Sly wasn't so much involved at that time, I think, when it comes to writing. I think Sly really got into writing really strong when he was about 15 years old, something like that. So I'm 9 years younger than Sly, so you know how old I was at that time.
Right.
But they were cooking, man, because they were serious people, because they had a serious father that believed in doing everything right the first time. And he had this way of training them as far as being, because they did a lot of things, because they played all these places like fairs, circus, you name it, all down south and all over the United States where they could be play at. And they were going through a lot of changes because of the prejudice that you know about.
Right.
And so I guess they just went through a lot of things, and I guess their father kept them together because he knew he needed to feed that side of the family. And to my understanding, and I would probably tell somebody, you know, just try to prove me different about what I'm thinking about and what I have never been told, but I just kind of try to work it out in my head, my own self, is that we had about the largest, or one of the largest bands ever in the history of the United States that was a family of that size that were playing that kind of music. You see, now you heard about Jimmy Dorsey and Tommy Dorsey, you heard the Heat brothers, you heard of the Jones brothers, you heard all them different families. They had great musicians in all them families, but they wasn't that large.
Right. So your band was comprised of family members exclusively.
We the only family that had a band like that size that was family. Now we had big bands all around. You know,
do you recall your first performance with the band?
Yeah.
Can you tell a little bit about that?
My father got sick, real sick one day, so he couldn't play. They had a rehearsal. They knew that I played an octave solo, just about anything at that time, because most things they played was rhythm and blues back then. One of this bebop stuff that, well, they was playing it, but you know, most cats weren't messing with it because it was just too difficult, you know.
Right.
But they used to get together, man, and so they tell me, Marky, we want you to sit in your father's chair, and we know you can't read him because we don't have no reason to read, but when we point to you, we want you to stand up and go ahead and solo. And then we tell you to quit. Once you sit down, sit down. So that's what they did to me. I got my father's chair, and they started playing a few tunes, and they featured, not featured, but had me play a solo tune. So I'd be playing, and all of a sudden they said, okay, Marky, go. And I stood up and I played, because I had a good ear I could play, and blues, but you know, it wasn't up for me to play. because just rooted in most people
Right.
of that year, of those times. So I played it okay, and then I was playing it, and they figured I was coming to the end, and so it's okay, quit, sit down. And I sit down until they finish playing the song. But that's how I got to playing with the family. I was the only one that I know of that played with the family band just for the rehearsals, until Daddy got, well again. But that's how I got my introduction to playing with the family. Now, my introduction for playing jazz, because I didn't know anything about jazz. I was a young kid in my teens. I was playing at this club that my family had played years before that, called Sunset Terrace.
That was in Indianapolis.
Indianapolis, on Indiana Avenue, down by Lockfield Garden, which is a complex for people living and things like that. So I played down there, like, I don't know, maybe 7 days a week, man. And been playing the same old blues and rhythm blues songs every night. And that got to be pretty boring to me after so long, I wanted to do something. I wanted to get venture into something maybe a little more interesting or more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So I got this record of Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, and it was featuring Lee Morgan. Bobby Timmons wrote the new music called the tune MOANIN.
Oh.
And I loved that tune. The tune was great. I thought Lee took a most brilliant solo on that song, because Lee was that kind of musician. And the young man he wasn't much older than I was, maybe about 4 or 5 years or something like that. But he was so ahead of a lot of people for his brilliancy of playing the trumpet, as well as composing and arranging. So, but I took the solo because I liked the song so much. I liked the construction of his solo. So I took his solo and I learned it note for note.
Mm.
So when I went to jam session and they called that song up, I knew I could play the song, and I knew when it came down to his first solo, it would go to the trumpet player like it did to Lee Morgan.
Okay.
So I learned the solo. So the only thing I had to worry about when I played that solo, I'd make sure I played every note correctly, because if I messed up, I'd just probably be lost.
Because you didn't know where the changes and things like that. You had just learned it.
I didn't know anything about changes,
So you got your language. That was a great way to, like they do now, to transcribe. They call that transcribing today.
Oh, yeah.
But you transcribed Lee's solo and really did not have an idea of the harmony underneath it yet.
No. I didn't know what he was really doing except just by notation.
Okay.
I think I played this little thing that he does on this song, on this he does that. And that's the only song I got from Lee Morgan that I understood and I felt I could play because I liked it so much. And I studied it so much. I stayed until I got everything note for note down. So when I got to the jam session, they said, "You want to do what you want to do, man?" I said, "Let's do MOANIN, man." So we do MOANIN, and that first song, I'll never forget it. Ba 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 da, shadoo ba doo ba dee doo da da, ba doo ba doo ba doo 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 da doo doo doo. All kind of thing that Lee did at the time, and I just loved it. And everybody that heard me play it for the first time, they said, "Wow, you sound just like Lee." Yeah. I got Lee solo.
You had appropriated Lee. That's the reason you sounded like him exactly. But
like
that's a great way to learn.
Oh yeah, that's
and then move on from there.
That's the only way you can learn if you didn't have the other kind of training.
Right.
That's why I say to you, if I had the training that these kids are getting today, can you imagine how far I'll be ahead? I could probably be playing on level slide and all those people that.
Well, but I think you underestimate yourself, because you're the reason, and your process is the reason that the kids today have the training they do.
Yeah.
Without you going through and setting that precedence during the golden age of jazz music, during that big mature age when you came along, you know.
Because I noticed that's what Sly and his brother Maceo, they somewhat did a similar thing. So Maceo used to kind of just, I don't know if he did every song like it, but a lot of the songs that Disney played and played solo on, Maceo stole that idea and stole his solo and could play on those solos of Disney note for note at that time.
Now, how did you get into composing and actually reading the music? When did you start writing music, writing it down and notating it?
Well, let me go back to some of the